Let's talk about the offense.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on tonight's show, we are going over Syracuse football's offense for 2025. We're going to talk about some position groups where the Orange may look to add on in the spring transfer portal window. We're also going to talk about some position groups that are open for competition. There's a lot of talented players in the mix, and we don't quite know yet who is going to start in these particular position groups. We're going to start the podcast talking about some of the set positions on offense for Syracuse in 2025. And before we get to everything, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So this is the first Locked On Syracuse episode post-Super Bowl. I hope everyone enjoyed it, even though it was a complete dud of the game. And shout out to any Philadelphia Eagles fans who are watching or listening to this podcast. Congratulations on an unbelievable season and your Super Bowl title. Second time in 6 years, I think, right? That's a really well-run franchise, the Philadelphia Eagles. Shout out to Mike McAllister. I know that he is an Eagles fan, so I'm sure he is doing quite well on this Monday evening. But let's get back to business. Let's talk some Syracuse football, all right? And let's go over this offense, some of the set positions for this unit in 2025. And I think the most slam dunk position lock for next season. You can set it and forget it using a fantasy football terminology. The slot receiver is Trebor Pena. One more year of eligibility left, and Trebor Pena had by far and away his best season in college in 2024. Before I get to his 2024 numbers, we could talk about his 2022 numbers, since that was his previous career high season, where he had 22 catches for 203 yards and no touchdowns. That was his best season in college until last year, where he broke out in a big way, 941 yards, 9 touchdowns, led the ACC with 84 catches, and was second team all-conference. He is the perfect underneath target for whoever starts under center for the Orange next season. He's perfect. Safety valve, whatever you want to use out there, that's Trebor Pena. He gets open. He makes plays. He is a set it and forget it, the starting slot receiver for 2025. You don't have to worry about him, barring any health concerns, which I do not believe there are right now. Let's get to the running back spot. Now, I believe the top 2 are in place, but it's open for interpretation within those top 2. And of course, I'm talking about Yasin Willis and Will Nixon. Syracuse, they got to replace a 2-time all-conference running back in LeQuint. It's not going to be easy. He was one of the best all-around running backs in the country last season. I'm talking about someone who can catch the ball out of the backfield, someone who can run for over 1,000 yards as well. LeQuint was as good as it gets in college football, and who knows where he'll go in the NFL draft. So it's a lot of production that Syracuse football is going to have to replace. But I think it's going to be Yasin Willis and Will Nixon. Let's talk about Willis for a moment. He's got 3 years of college eligibility remaining. He played 11 games as a true freshman in 2024. And in those 11 games, he had 36 carries, 136 rushing yards, and 1 touchdown. And he also had 8 catches. I would like his efficiency to go up next season. He only had 3.6 yards per carry. But keep in mind that Yasin Willis is listed as 6'1", 226 pounds. This is a power back. So I imagine his role for next year would be the lead first and second down running back as of right now. So I don't know how much the efficiency will jump up too much, considering his role is going to be run downhill, try to run over defenders, short yardage situations, which, by the way, LeQuint Allen, despite not being the biggest guy in the world, he was really good in short yardage. But that's what I think Yasin Willis's role is for next year so far. His efficiency, I would like to get over 4 yards per carry. I think that's a reasonable expectation for him, especially because it'll be his second season in college. He should be able to make that jump. And then you got Will Nixon, who's got 1 year of eligibility left. He is the son of offensive coordinator Jeff Nixon. By the way, Jeff Nixon, he recently extended with Syracuse football. I believe he got a little bit of a raise after last season, much deserved. Houston Texans decided to hire someone else for their offensive coordinator spot. We are saved. All right. So Jeff Nixon coming back, and his son, Will Nixon, in all likelihood, is coming back too. He played in 3 games last season, but he missed the remainder of the year with a broken foot. It was a Liz Frank injury, to be more specific. And I like the small glimpses of what we saw from Will Nixon. This is also someone who started their collegiate career, I believe it was at Nebraska, as a wide receiver. So you know that he can catch at a relatively high clip. I mean, you got to be pretty good in high school as a receiver to get recruited as a receiver in college. I understand it may not have worked out and he had to transition to running back, but you don't just lose the ability to catch a football. So Will Nixon, I liked what I saw from him this season in the very short, limited sample and the very little glimpses that we got. However, with him, it's going to come down to health. It comes down to health. I'm not exactly sure how long it takes to heal up from that Liz Frank injury. I think it was the same one that Oronde Gadsden had. And Oronde Gadsden, he suffered it in week 2 against Western Michigan in 2023. And he wasn't necessarily a lock to play in week 1 in 2024. He did play week 1 against Ohio, but he was not a lock. So just keep an eye on that with Will Nixon, his foot injury, and let's hope that he's healthy and perhaps ready to go for spring ball, if not fall camp. And finally, another set position that we got on the offense is tight end. Syracuse has to replace Oronde Gadsden, another 2-time all-conference player, actually a 2-time All-American tight end. Luckily, they got Jamie Tremble. Jamie Tremble is a 2024 4-star tight end. He didn't see the field a whole lot this past season, but he did dress in 12 games. He had 1 catch against Holy Cross. The thing that excites me about Jamie Tremble is that he profiles very similar to Oronde Gadsden. He is more of a receiving tight end. So it's hard to put All-American expectations on him, but would I be shocked if Jamie Tremble comes out and is an all-conference tight end next season? I wouldn't be shocked. So leave your thoughts in the comment section below. I think Jamie Tremble could have a really big year in 2025. He's a 4-star tight end that profiles like Oronde Gadsden. And on top of that, it seems as though the staff has a lot of faith in him. And the reason I say that is because when have the Orange this offseason been connected to a tight end? Have they been connected to a tight end one time? Right? We hear all the time that this player is supposed to go on a visit for Syracuse, or Syracuse checked in on this player at this position, right? They even did that with running back. They did check on one running back, but I don't think they're going to add a running back, but they did. Right? Not one time did I ever come across any public report out there saying that Syracuse was looking at a tight end. Not one time. So I think they have a lot of confidence in Jamie Tremble, and I think he can have a really big year in 2025. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the comment section below on some of the guys who I think their roles are pretty much as close to locked in as you possibly can get. I mean, Trebor Pena is the obvious one. He's going to be the starting slot receiver. Jamie Tremble's pretty obvious as the starting tight end. And as far as the top 2 running backs, I believe it's going to be Yasin Willis and Will Nixon as a 1-2 tandem. We'll see what happens in the spring, but that's where I'm at so far. If it'll be 50-50, 60-40, we'll see what happens in the spring. But those are the 4 guys who I think their roles are pretty much set for next year. Now, coming up, we'll talk about some position groups where there is a lot of competition. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I miss a chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I'm Jackson Holzer, and this is Locked On Syracuse, and thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen of every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and on this edition of Locked On Syracuse, we are talking about the Orange's offense for 2025. We just went over some of the set position groups for next year. Starting slot receiver is going to be Trebor Pena, the running back tandem of Yasin Willis and Will Nixon, and finally, the starting tight end, in all likelihood, will be 2024 four-star Jamie Tremble getting his shot to take over for Oronde Gadsden. Now, let's go over some position groups where I think there's going to be a lot of competition this offseason, and I cannot wait for the spring when we actually get our first look at Syracuse's offense. And let's get the obvious out of the way, right? But we have to talk about it because it's going to be the main story throughout the entire offseason and well into the start of the season. And that's the quarterback competition. You got Rickie Collins. You got Jakari Williams. You got Michael Johnson Jr. You got Luke Carney. You got Rich Bellin, right? That's 5 players. And our first look at them is going to be that spring game. And we're going to get clarity on who is likely to enter fall camp as the starting quarterback. Things could change pretty quickly, but that's going to be our first look, is that spring game for these quarterbacks. My guess as of right now, and it's subject to change, but it's probably not going to change for quite a while until I'm proven otherwise wrong, is that Rickie Collins will be the starting quarterback for the Orange. The reason why I say this is because he is the LSU transfer. He is entering his 3rd year of college, even though he's got 3 years of eligibility, right? One of those years was a redshirt year at LSU, and he's a former top prospect. So Syracuse is hoping to develop him and make him a full-time starter for this upcoming season. Now, look, he's not someone that's going to be given the job right away. By no means. I mean, even if he wins the job, which I think he ultimately will, I don't think he's going to get the longest leash in the world. I don't think anyone on the roster has earned that right to have such a long leash. But I still think he's going to be the starter, and who knows, right? He could be really good. He could not be really good, but there is going to be a quarterback competition. I think as of right now, Rickie Collins will win the job. I'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. The only quarterback really I would be surprised that actually starts a good bit next year is Michael Johnson Jr. And the reason why I say this is because I understand he was the backup last year to Kyle McCord, but with Michael Johnson Jr., how much upside are you really getting with him? Right? Syracuse football, it seems like, as demonstrated with their 35-person recruiting class in 2025 and not taking a lot of players in the portal, and the fact that most of the quarterbacks on the roster are young, that this is a team, this coaching staff, they want to play the young guys and see who they can build around in coming years and who, well, let's face it, they can't build around in coming years. So what would necessarily be the point of playing Michael Johnson Jr. unless he is head and shoulders better than everyone else in that quarterback room? Like, if he's better than everyone else, fine, right? But if it's even a tie or it's close, I say you play the young guy because everyone's young. So let's see what we got, right? See if there's any sort of potential there with the other young guys. Luke Carney could certainly earn the job. Rich Bellin could earn the job. Those are both true freshmen. Jakari Williams, a lot of people like him. He was a 2024 3-star recruit. Perhaps he can earn the job. My guess between now and the spring is that Rickie Collins will be the starting quarterback for the Orange in 2025. The other position group where I think there's going to be a lot of competition with is outside wide receiver. There are a ton of names to go over, but I only have a few of them listed. And also, I should throw this out here. I would not be surprised if the Orange actually added a wide receiver in the spring. When we had on Mike McAllister for 24/7 Sports, he mentioned that Syracuse may look to add another wide receiver, another field stretching guy. And the reason why he said this is because the Orange were going after Amari Evans from Penn State, a field stretching wide receiver from them. Now, ultimately, he decided to go to Washington, but Syracuse did at least get him in the building for a visit for what it's worth. But that's a cue, or not a cue, that's a clue as to where the staff may be looking in the spring portal window, which I'll get to in just a moment, that they could look to add. But you got Daryl Gill, Maury Hatcher, Zeed Haynes, Justice Ross Simmons, Emmanuel Ross. There are so many guys to talk about. Daryl Gill as someone who I think could have a really big 2025. I think he's going to be elevated from where he was last season. He was a 5th option for the Orange last year. Amari Hatcher is a veteran deep threat. You got Zeed Haynes. Who knows what we're going to get from Zeed Haynes? He was supposed to be the number 1 wide receiver last year, but he only played 2 games. You got Justice Ross Simmons, also supposed to have a big role last year. And then you got Wally Pipt. And you got Emmanuel Ross. He was a 2024 4-star recruit. Is he going to take a sophomore jump? That's a play on the sophomore slump. Most people say sophomore slump in regards to having a good rookie year and then a bad second year. I say sophomore jump, right? For Emmanuel Ross, he's going to take that next step. Maybe. The point is that there's going to be a lot of competition for those outside wide receiver spots. I say Daryl Gill gets at least one, and who knows with the other. We'll just have to see what happens in the spring and into fall camp. So leave your thoughts on that in the comments section below. Starting quarterback, I think, will be Rickie Collins, but it's not a guarantee. Outside wide receiver, again, lots of competition. I'm going Daryl Gill, and if I had to throw another one out there, I will say Amari Hatcher. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below, because coming up, we'll talk about the one position group that I have left out where the Orange could look to add in the spring as well. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. It's possible that Syracuse football looks to add to its offensive line in the spring transfer portal window. Now, for those that don't know, the spring transfer portal window lasts from April 16th to the 25th. This is a second opportunity for everyone in college football to put themselves into the transfer portal to hopefully find the best situation for themselves. There's going to be a lot of competition for Syracuse football and their offensive line. And I would, again, not be surprised if they look to add to that unit in the spring. Let's go over the tackles. And I think there are 3 main contenders for 2 starting tackle spots. Again, one of these 3 that I'm going to mention is not going to start. You got N'Keal Betrand, the Alabama transfer from this offseason. You got David Woolaba and Demetrius Witherspoon. Woolaba and Witherspoon are both veteran returners for Syracuse football. They got plenty of experience in college football. Betrand was a 3-star recruit in 2023, and Syracuse football has actually tried to get him twice, and they finally got him this offseason. So make that the 3rd time they try to get him. They tried to get him in 2023 as a recruit. They missed. They went after him in 2024 was when he was in the transfer portal. Syracuse again missed, but they got him in 2025. So shout out to Syracuse football. 3rd time is the charm with N'Keal Betrand. One of those guys is going to have to sit. And by that, I mean, it doesn't mean they're never going to play. They're going to have to rotate in, but one of them cannot start. That's probably a better way to phrase it. So there's competition there. Don't think they will necessarily add a tackle, although it's possible they look to add a tackle in the portal. The guards. The guard spots are very much up in the air. And the reason why they're up in the air is because are Mark Petrie and or Jacob Bradford returning for another year in 2025. For those that don't know, Mark Petrie and Jacob Bradford were the starting guards for the Orange in 2024. And, well, we thought at the beginning of the offseason that Syracuse was not going to have him back. And then, long story short, they each gained an extra year of college eligibility. But we have not heard a formal announcement about either of them as to whether or not they're going to use that extra year of college eligibility. I asked Mike McAllister about it about a week ago. I think that's the last time when I had him on. And he said we might not know about it until that spring roster comes out for the Orange. And if we see that one or both of them are on there, great. If not, well, we have our answer either way. So it could be a little bit before we find out if Mark Petrie and Jacob Bradford are returning. If they return, that's terrific. Those are the two starting guards again for 2025. If they don't return, well, then you got a competition. I mean, could Joe Cruz take over that role? Could Josh Miller maybe get a chance to play guard? There's a lot up in the air. Are they going to look to add in the spring portal? Absolutely, that could be on the table. And then you got center. And I don't think that Syracuse will go portaling for a center in the spring. I think it'll be in-house. And the two candidates that I have in mind are Cody Hornsby and Khalil Stewart, who is a true freshman. Also, Josh Miller could potentially steal that center spot as well. But when you look at that offensive line, there's not a lot of clarity on the unit right now, just because you got 3 tackles for 2 spots. We don't know if the starting guards from last year are going to be back, and the center spot is up for grabs. On top of that, they could easily add on another offensive lineman in the transfer portal. What are your thoughts on Syracuse football's offensive line for this upcoming season? Are you worried? Are you excited about it? Let me know in the comments section below. As far as what is coming up on the podcast in the future, tomorrow we got Syracuse basketball back in action. They are going to Miami at 7 p.m. Eastern, and there will be a full post-game reaction podcast. Also, if you missed it, don't worry. You still got plenty of time to vote. Poll Friday is live on Twitter at LO_Syracuse and on YouTube in the post section. So be sure to check it out as well. I mentioned 3 young players in the question and which one of them you think is going to take the biggest jump in year 2. So feel free to check that out when you are done watching or listening to this podcast. And thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. For your second listen, be sure to check out the Locked On ACC podcast. Alex Dono, Kenton Gibbs. They keep it real and bring you the truth about where your favorite ACC team stands within the conference. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. And if you could just do me a favor, tell 1 or 2 of your closest Syracuse friends about the Locked On Syracuse podcast so this channel can grow and reach all Syracuse Orange fans. And I will see you all again soon.